The July sitting of Tynwald saw a number of significant announcements from Chief Minister Alf Cannan, which could radically alter the social and physical landscape of our island. So why is government doing this? In this extended agenda, the Chief Minister explains in some depth his government's thinking in developing this bold ambition. I began by asking Mr. Cannan why this strategy is needed.
Yeah, I think as I said in my opening remarks, this has been the culmination of 15 months direct work and some considerable thought beforehand. COVID gave us time to reflect on the island's economy. There was obviously going to be a need for a recovery programme in terms of our economic focus, but I think we did sit there at the time and say, well, what is the future for the island now? Is it time now to make sure that we're more focused and targeted and we know what we're striving to achieve? And this really is the culmination of that. We've got extensive reports which are being released at the moment and everybody will have access to, that has given us a wealth of information in various areas. And this is the headline government response, which I think is ambitious, it's specific, it's targeted, and it sets us on a course that I think will help government deliver not only just a better economy for the island, but also better public services and a better environment for people. And I set it out in terms of the headlines with four key policy achievables or four key policy pillars: 100,000 population by 2037, a £10 billion economy by 2032, £200 million of additional government revenue, pillar 3, by 2032. And the fourth pillar is a sustainability agenda that really provides the platform for renewable energy and sustainability when it comes to climate change to be at the heart of our thought process and programme.
And of course, your term in office comes to an end in 2026. What significant difference are we likely to see by then?
Well, I think first and foremost, the critical thing here, there's been a lot of drift over the years. We talk about, for example, the working population and growing the working population. Nobody ever really has defined what that means, by how many. We see that in a number of our towns, for example, that while some regeneration has taken place, there is still a number of brownfield and empty sites that have not really delivered on their potential, and we've not maximised the vibrancy of our towns. We've had a lot of planning issues in terms of housing, for example. That's drifted. I don't think any focus has been brought to government, and we're paying the penalty for that now and trying to play a game of catch-up effectively in terms of making sure our housing is right. So in a huge number of areas, and including renewable energy, for example, Phil, I feel that there is plenty of evidence to say that we've been drifting. Yes, we've made the right noises, but there's not really been that focus and that target attached to this in so many different areas of government policy that ultimately benefit us all. I think what this does now, it brings focus, it brings headline targets, and that means that we can work backwards and set out targeted achievements along the route to meeting these year-based targets in 2037, 2032, and indeed the target in 2030, which is incorporated within this strategy, to have 100% renewable energy available to us at that point.
KPMG has produced a very large report, the findings of which lie behind this economic strategy. How did the report differ from similar reports which would have been left behind by the Brown and Bell administrations? And will the report be released, and how much does it cost?
Well, the report is being released now, and one of the things I want to do is to make sure that there's easy public access to this data and information. And as you and I were having a quick chat before I came on air, that the government website at times can be pretty difficult to navigate, and that's got to be sorted out. But I need to make sure people can get proper access to the data and information so they can understand how the government has arrived at its response. I think the nature of the work that's been undertaken, the extensive analysis and consultation that's taken place of our economy, the indicators and the graphs and the charts that have been produced will show overall that there is a risk that if we do not be more ambitious and seek to perhaps change some of the trajectories that we are on as an island, and particularly when it comes to our demographics, particularly when it comes to the makeup of our businesses and different sectors of our economy, particularly when it comes to our sustainability agenda, and particularly when it comes to our government revenues, then there is a danger that we're going to get 8-10 years down the road and find that we are in a period of managed decline because we've simply failed to really get to grips early enough with some of these key challenges. And particularly when it comes to sustainability and the renewable programme, we are behind. That is pretty clear and obvious, I think, on what KPMG have come along and said to us and said other countries are receiving millions and millions of pounds from now offshore developments, wind farm developments predominantly, and are feeding this and all part of their significant renewable programs. And so far we've done nothing. And we've been trying to do something since 2013, 12, and possibly earlier maybe. And this is just not really acceptable. It's not ambitious enough. But more importantly, we're going to let ourselves down in the future unless we get with this programme. And we've only got a decade or so, 12 years, before, in theory, the gas turbines need to be effectively replaced and restructured, and we would need a new power station to take us forward if we were going to continue to rely on gas. So we need to set out a number of these ambitions, these headline ambitions, contain within them significant policy directives, effectively, that now need to be achieved. So when you ask that question, what's this going to mean? It will mean that we will be able to report back to people with clear targets in mind for the future, but also demonstrate to people that we are providing, for example, energy security for the future, that we are going to create an island that delivers better public services, that's a more vibrant economy, that creates more diversity when it comes to jobs and numbers. And behind that and underpin that, I hope, will be the fact that we will be delivering better public services.
John Rimington, I know there's a blast from the past, famously probably lost his seat for a number of reasons, but one of the headline reasons he lost his seat was for identifying and probably saying in inappropriate language that pensioners are a drain on society. Now, I don't think he meant it in quite that way, but ultimately what the figures are showing, and indeed, I've had at the pit of my stomach this uneasy feeling, at least for 10 years now, that we haven't really addressed this. What we have is a reducing number of people supporting those who have retired, or indeed those who are still to have their education, children, and so on. And this is the fundamental problem here, isn't it? And this is the big problem that has to be addressed somehow. So those who may criticise the ambition actually perhaps need to look at the stark reality, which is we simply can't carry on like this, can we?
Well, I think, this really shouldn't be an argument about the elderly or the young or what suits which generation. This is about building for the future. This is about benefiting everybody in society. And Phil, I'm a big believer in the sort of one nation principles and in terms of, building for everybody. Yes, we do need to be in a position, however, that we are bringing forward policies that are relevant and pertinent. We are only a small island. We only have a certain land mass and landscape and capability and infrastructure capability. But we do need to make sure that we are on a proper pathway to ensuring that we have the right balanced population, that we have the balance in the economy that ensures that we are sustainable into the future. We don't want to get into a situation where you have a sort of 60% non-working or dependent population and a 40% working age population. that sort of makeup is going to cause us significant problems, and they're the sort of trajectory that's being indicated within the analysis being done by KPMG. But more importantly, I think there are other benefits to be had and we should think about here, and that is a more sustainable environment. Better environment for some of our smaller businesses, for our retail businesses, for our hospitality businesses, that would give them a larger pool. And if we can build the island successfully and create the vision, and we're doing that with brownfield site regeneration by now looking at changing the emphasis in the way that planning is being dealt with. We released a built environment reform program to help with major applications, new customer charter when it comes to planning. And also there's this real focus now through the Max Development Corporation and our Brownfield Site Regeneration Committee to make progress in terms of helping our towns regenerate by bringing people back into town. So there's real benefits here, Phil, to this program, which are sensible, pragmatic solutions attached to them, and don't mean, for example, that we're going to see widespread greenfield site development, because there's a lot we can do with within our existing infrastructure and within our existing boundaries.
And this is, I suppose, a criticism of sorts, but this is the classic thing, isn't it? You come forward with a bold vision, and then you get criticised for not coming forward with it sooner. But there is a fair argument that would suggest that the previous administration knew much of what's in this report in terms of where the problems lie, but there wasn't an awful lot by way of action. And I'm happy to shoulder some of the blame too. The administration before that had similar statistics. It was blatantly obvious that where we were was largely unsustainable and significant change needed to happen. Is it a fair criticism to level at the previous administration that not enough was done?
Well, I don't. I try not to look back. I think we need to look forward. I think what I would say is that I feel that we have been in drift because we haven't been bold enough to say what our targets are and what needs to happen to address the problems. And yes, there, of course, in coming forward with bold statements, you do open yourself to significant criticism. Nevertheless, these problems exist. We can't shirk away from it. And if we are going to be building a successful society, achieving vibrancy, sustainability, then we do need to set ourselves the targets that we need to achieve that. Because without these sorts of targets, Phil, there is a danger that we continue to drift by just making statements such as, we need to regenerate our towns, and then not apply the type of focus that we need to that. Or, for example, housing, and not have an understanding of what the island really needs to look like. And I think so just to take this 100,000 population figure, for me, one of the attractivenesses here is that you can take a whole island view and say, well, how do we now, where's the spaces that we need for regeneration? Where can we help towns do that successfully by building more apartments or building more houses within the brownfield site space? Where else on the island is there regeneration needed? Where have we predetermined that we already need to build out? Derby, I know it's in my own constituency, Derby, for example. Everybody recognises that I speak to that we could do with another 200-300 mixed housing estate up there. And why can't we get on and rise up and meet these challenges? And we've now got the toolkit in some respects to do that. The Max Development Corporation, for example, we've seen progress with that already, and that came out of the last administration, and that was with the old Nobles Hospital site, which has now been the old nurses' home, which has been regenerated into a mixed complex there. I announced yesterday, within the vicinity of that Nobles home, they will be bringing forward imminently now public plans for a new mixed residential site development there that's going to help regenerate that area. There's another site in Douglas which is currently under active consideration, which I hope will be announced also very soon. So we are making progress in some of these areas. One of the critical factors in all this that I did make absolutely clear that yesterday in saying that we estimated about £1 billion of combined government and private sector investment over the next 2 years is to enable the private sector to invest. And actually, Phil, you and I know that's been a perennial headache for government for some considerable time, investors with good ideas, but failing to navigate the government bureaucracy that can often be attached with government-owned sites, let alone privately owned sites, but government-owned sites. And we've got to unpick this. And the Brownfield Regeneration Steering Group, Regeneration Committee, is tasked with that. And we have made it a national priority in this particular area. And that's highlighted in our Built Environment Reform Programme, which was also released yesterday.
Some of the critics that have already emerged via social media, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it, have suggested that whilst the strategy is big on ambition, and there's no doubt about that, it's very clear, and your own delivery is clearly impassioned, and you clearly believe, and I have confidence that if anyone's going to drive this through, it's you. But it's very light on actual detail. Now, I see references in the summaries that, or the what has been released so far, to action plans. How soon are we going to see the action plans? Because ultimately, having the bold vision is all well and good. What people really want to know is what the detail is. How is this actually going to be delivered?
Well, we will see these targets, these action plans being delivered and evolved over the next few months and indeed years. We can't possibly scope the whole programme out in detail when you're delivering this. There are specific targets already included within the documentation. For example, particularly when it comes to our sustainability for energy. 20 megawatts of on-island renewables by 2026. In the policy documentation, MUA have got to deliver on that now. 2030, the new interconnector must be in. That's another target. That's not just about climate change, Phil. This is actually about pragmatic solutions for the future as well. Offshore wind, we need to have that up and running by 2032. And as we uncover the detail of that, hopefully we'll be able to bring that date forward. But some of these projects take 5 or 6 years to bring to completion.
And of course, the difference is that you are actually setting out clearly what the target is. These aspirations have been there from previous governments in the past, but this plan actually, or the strategy, actually sets out the target.
And we have to build back from that to a certain degree. And there's a number of policy levers and issues that we need to discuss, and indeed, to a large degree, have to give people time to discuss this and understand it as well. I mean, this is only released yesterday. There's a lot to take in, and I understand, of course, there will be consternation in society and elements of society who will wonder how this is going to be done. Does this mean that we're going to cover the island in housing, and where is the focus, and what are the opportunities? So we need to have quite a long discussion. We're going to do that over the summer. We've got a government conference, I used the chance to publicise this on the 20th and 21st of September, the first ever inaugural government conference, and we're going to have 2 days of speakers, of Q&As, of discussions, of panel groups, an opportunity to engage with a wide range of stakeholders on a number of issues. And then in November, I will ask Tynwald to support the strategy that we give to them at that point, which I hope will clearly contain these sort of 4 key pillars. But yes, there's still a lot to be thrashed out. And in terms of the policy levers and how we apply them, we need to do that in a considered way, and some of the results will take time to filter through. I think that also doesn't remove the need to deal with the problems of today. This is not a magic solution that's just going to solve all the island's problems, Phil. Let's be clear about that. There's significant challenges facing today, and we've got to overcome those.
And that, of course, is one of the biggest hurdles I think you have here. The reality on the ground for most young, economically active people in the Isle of Man is that they can barely afford to live here. They are priced out of the housing market. And if we're to get to 1,000 immigrants a year, 1,000 new residents coming in as per the strategy, the gap between where we are now and where you want us to be next year is very significant indeed. So how will you achieve this radical transformation, and what reassurance can you give to those who have seen a year of this administration fail to address one of the key priorities that was raised at the last general election, which is the housing crisis?
Well, I think, I disagree with you slightly, because we set up a Housing and Communities Board. We're already now starting to bring some results from that Housing and Communities Board in terms of a programme to give people better access to first-time buyer support schemes and raise thresholds attached to that. We've also got a grip in terms of the numbers of first-time buyers, houses that are being built across the island, and we can see there's 200 or so, I think, from memory now, that are being built by March 2024, in conjunction with wide-ranging developments that are taking place. We've also made the commitments today. We're speeding up the planning process for major applications. That's going to help, I hope, in terms of speeding up the house building program that's going on. And we've also got to, we've already highlighted the problems of the 4,000 or so empty or derelict properties around this island that we need to bring back into active use, if you like. So there is work underway. The Noble's Home, the regeneration project I told you at Westmoreland Road, and we're going to get that up. The plans that we've got for the mixed-use housing estate, and further plans that we're going to bring forward. So things are happening. You can't necessarily just turn that around overnight, but we're back on it. And as I said right at the beginning, I'm afraid government took its eye off the ball when it came to housing. We've set up the board, we're making progress, and you will see active results. When this time next year, Phil, I will be talking to you, I hope, not only about those 2 sites and the progress that's been made and the numbers of people that are scheduled to fill that, but the other sites that we've brought on stream. And I hope we will have also had progress with other sites around Douglas, which we will be geared towards solving the housing problems that we are facing. But this takes time, and the critical thing for me, at least, we've brought it all back into focus, and we're starting to deliver on what needs to be done to help solve it. But this economic strategy also sets out to achieve a better island, a better society for people, more diversity of jobs and employment, greater opportunities, higher pay for people, a better standard of living. And there's lots of other detail and policy levers that we need to bring around to make all this happen. So it's a very ambitious document, and contained within it is the kind of level of detail that starts to talk to and address some of the problems that you're actually raising with me at this point.
The vision in your strategy is clear and bold. The determination and sense of purpose you've demonstrated is admirable, but none of the House of Keys members talked much, if at all, about significant immigration during the last election. So you have no mandate from the people to deliver this radical agenda. Could you tell us a bit more then about how you're going to engage over the summer with the public, and how are you going to assess sort of public reaction to this, or indeed to convince the public that this is the solution to many of the issues that were discussed at election time?
Well, I think that ultimately, to a degree, the public have to trust in their elected representatives to vote on this kind of thing, and that's why we're not bringing forward a vote until November, and that gives us a sort of almost 4 months really for people to digest this. It's clear to me it just can't be the Alf Cannan or Council of Ministers economic strategy as a standalone against all the odds. There has to be community understanding and buy-in. And of course, we're never going to please all of the people all of the time in whatever we do. That's just the nature of the game. And nor, on the other hand, nor should we be setting out to be a populist government and failing to address the hard issues, and that is part of the role and responsibility that one takes on when you step into this job. So this is about judgment, political judgment, of course. The engagement programme will be in the form of a written consultation, and we'll publicise that. I appreciate we don't often get huge responses to this consultation. As I said, we've got a government conference, and partly there's a responsibility on all Tynwald members now, particularly MHKs, but all Tynwald members, to engage with their constituents. That's why I told them yesterday. I said, you need to spend the summer talking to your constituents and getting feedback and understanding their views. The important thing is within all this, though, that we try and retain, the high level understanding that really comes through the KPMG report. That doesn't send the Isle of Man into a spiral if you do nothing, but does highlight that you're taking big risks with future sustainability, future business interest in the island that hasn't progressed, that hasn't tackled the climate change issues, hasn't secured its energy supply for the future, doesn't believe in sort of vibrancy and dynamic environments in some of its towns, for example, and doesn't have that longer term sustainability. We need to have those conversations, Phil. That's what we're going to do over the summer, and Tynwald will vote. But I have to address this with passion because I fundamentally believe in it. And in fact, this, believe it or not, in some ways reflects a statement that I made or debate that I tried to initiate in Tynwald back in 2014, where I sort of said that actually if we were bold enough to set ambitious targets, we would enable ourselves to build with confidence, know what we were doing in terms of our targets, get our infrastructure projects to the level that we need, and I hope actually bring about efficiencies, create better environments for people, make towns more environmentally friendly but also vibrant, and also create the opportunities that our young people need to want to either stay here or even come back to the island as well. And those are the benefits that one sets out when you deliver this kind of high level ambitious strategy.
Mr. Speaker, I think, raised a very pertinent point, which is that over the course of the last 10 or so years, we've seen a fairly significant reduction in senior and middle management roles in government. What you're talking about here is really quite radical. How are you going to deliver this with a depleted civil service? Because effectively you're expecting loads of new ideas and new strategies to be delivered by a civil service which is perhaps creaking at the seams.
I think, Phil, government can't deliver this alone. This is enabling people to succeed, and we have to do that, and we have to do that quickly. Particularly when it comes to things like brownfield sites and housing and building and construction for housing, apartments, places for people to live. When we look at renewable programs, for example, we shouldn't just be consumed. This is just government. We need to enable the private sector to successfully do a lot of the heavy lifting. And of course, we put the right frameworks around that and regulations around that, then we can work very successfully in partnership. Where we've potentially gone wrong in the past, we've allowed sort of single entities, if you like, to dominate certain sectors. I think we've learnt our lessons from that, and we just need to be careful about how it's done. But this can be done by private sector investment, and by having the right enablers in place to allow people to express themselves. There's this idea that everything has got to be done by government should be absolutely dismissed. I mean, that's why, for example, we're undertaking the strategic review of some of our brownfield sites and pushing government to let go of some of these brownfield sites, because their strategic purpose is very, very unclear in terms of the long term. We're just holding sites around towns and around the island with no real potential vision or strategy for the future. So, we can do this. We can enable the private sector to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the benefit of the island, and that's going to be the key. Not growing government to deliver, but helping the private sector deliver. And also, when we come to growing certain sectors and, getting the Department of Enterprise, for example, to look at some of supporting and enabling our existing sectors to grow, but also growing new sectors. I want to see more targets supplied, more streamlined business agencies that are really focused on targeted deliverables around jobs and targets related directly to that sector that they are tasked with growing. And that is also a benefit of saying things like you want a £10 billion economy, because you can then track that back into various sectors and start asking people to deliver.
You're certainly talking the talk when it comes to cultural change across the civil service, and I suppose what's needed then is the delivery, because effectively part of the problem that many people see is that civil servants have become so ingrained in a particular way of doing things, and perhaps scared or concerned that if they step too far outside of their brief, they could end up being, criticised on the floor of Tynwald, potentially having their career shortened. How would you actually do that cultural change, which is a fairly inhibited civil service, unwilling to take risk and unwilling to support bold initiatives? How do you shift that to a more vibrant civil service like you've been describing, that is prepared to allow initiative to enable the private sector to get on and do the development, to actually free up the system?
Well, first of all, they've got to have the political leadership, will, and decision-making process that enables them to do that. So they require and need political decisiveness and bravery, I think, in order to be given those indicators as the first step. The second point there is that a lot of this actually, I think, is not necessarily about reluctance. It's about governance, making sure that the ideas have got a robust thought process to them, that they have got at the heart of them a strong business case, and that they are workable. And we can do that by ensuring that they get properly stress tested at departmental levels. That's, for example, why on the back of the Dr. Anson case, tomorrow or today even, I'll be asking Tynwald to support the concept of having non-executive directors on boards to help with that. But also then, in terms of the overall departmental delivery, I think there's weaknesses. We talked about culture. That's very much at the heart of that. But that comes down to a ingrained process of, I think, a failure to help people move forward. Management structures that lead to poor decision making, and not listening to people on the ground who actually can see the problems. And you and I will know from your own experience that if you go out and talk to workers on the ground, doctors, nurses, policemen, wherever they are, they can often see solutions to the problems, and we're not doing that successfully. And this is part about changing the workforce culture. We're on that at the moment. I said there needed to be a turnaround within a 12-month period, and that was targeted for next spring. We're doing that through assessment of the leadership, senior leadership, also through this human resources program that we've got being undertaken at the moment. And I need to get everybody on message with that, which I know the ministers are, and I know that the senior executives are. And finally, I'm aiming to bring this now. We're meeting once a month, not only just as the council ministers, are meeting in conjunction with the chief officers as well. I want them to understand and be part of that political policy programme, so that we can actually have accountability together, rather than this constant separation between policy and delivery. We've got to start bringing that closer, and there has to be targeted accountability and people answerable as to why things aren't happening, or if a vision is being presented, what is going wrong in terms of the failure to deliver on that.
You've talked in the past about a lazy structure in the civil service. I mean, many civil servants would say, "Well, I'm not lazy. I'm working really hard." But I suppose what you mean is the system is not really fit for purpose. It needs I suppose a kick up the backside in some way, so that instead of being busy working out all the reasons to say no to a certain thing. Civil servants are instead busy looking at all the reasons to say yes. That's pretty much what you were after, wasn't it?
Well said, Phil. I think, well, no, but I mean, you've got to have this can-do attitude, and that needs to start filtering through. We've also got to take the responsibility for understanding where there is weakness in particular areas, and set about changing that to help people make positive decisions. But yes, I think when I said that government was lazy, absolutely, there are so many people in the civil service and across the public sector who work tremendously hard, and in fact I tried to make this clear at the point. They are doing a fantastic job. It's the infrastructure around them, the way that government operates. It's the, perhaps, we're so busy sometimes, saying this must be done, and failing to actually get the solutions driven from the bottom up, rather than it's always top down. And there are solutions that can be had by making sure that we've engaged properly. And so, for example, when you take things like transformation programs, as anybody who's been involved in big transformation programs will tell you, it's points just going to the staff and telling them that's the way to do things in the future. They won't understand that unless you explain properly why things need to change and actually get them to understand. So this is when I'm talking about culture change, but also within that, I don't want to be bogged down in terms of taking our eye off the ball, which is ultimately about delivering for the stakeholders, for the customer, for the people of this island. And we need to get back into the mindset of delivery and asking the questions, is what we are doing delivering results for people?
You've lost 2 ministers and countless chief executives over the course of the last, since your administration has come into existence. Is it you, or is it just the pace that you're setting is too fast for some people to keep up with?
I think let's just deal with the ministers first. I mean, David Ashford, as you know, clearly made that decision, and we know the reasons why. So that's completely separate. And Tim Crookall, sadly, has decided that he too feels that there are he for personal reasons he doesn't want to work with the Council of Ministers in its current format. There's no issues with the policies or the leadership, as far as the best of my knowledge, and I'm sure Tim will explain himself. So I think there's two separate cases there in the ministers. And look, I said before, we need to change. We need to change, and we need to get better outcomes, and government needs to apply itself to tackling more effectively and efficiently the problems of today. For example, the housing programme falling very much sort of behind the curve, renewable energy programmes that just haven't been delivering. I think going back to what we've seen from analysis and education system, that because it hasn't been willing to start tackling quality assurance and targets, now, according to KPMG, is behind benchmark when it comes to competitor jurisdictions. We have got to get back into a mindset of delivery, but that is not the people at the coalface issue, because as I said, everybody's working hard. We need to change the way the overall culture, get minds refocused back on delivery, and ensuring that we are working for the people of this island in the most productive, efficient, effective way, but most importantly, we are getting real outcomes that matter.
Is the planning system fit for purpose?
We are working, so I made 3 major announcements yesterday. It's a bit unfortunate that they all came on the same day, but we've just been trying to put together the detail, the documentation, the policy headlines, the targets within all this. So yesterday I brought forward not only the economic strategy, underpinning that in many ways was the built environment reform programme and our climate change action plan and roadmap and new target. Planning is very much at the forefront of what we are achieving to do. There are reforms set out in that built environment reform, a customer charter, new major applications process, We're strengthening the planning department. We're giving them more resources. We recognise that if we don't get a grip of planning, allowing the private sector to get on, particularly with major applications, with brownfield sites, then we are inhibiting ourselves as we move forward. That is under review. That still needs to be put under proper scrutiny. I've got a question just around the governance and making sure that we are clear in terms of what happens and how it needs to be achieved. But that reform programme is underway now and is a national priority in terms of the built environment, as I've highlighted throughout this discussion.
And what reassurance can you give to those people, environmentalists, people who have an interest in the built environment, the historical integrity of the built environment, communities, in terms of what sort of say they're going to have in the process? When you make these bold announcements without huge amounts of detail associated with it, people can start fearing the worst. So can you give reassurance that this is not just a charter for developers to crack on and ignore all the needs that people feel that the planning system should deliver?
Yeah, the planning framework still needs to be enabled to allow people a proper say and proper input. That doesn't mean to say, but we do need to be in a position where we need to make decisions more, in a firmer way, give people clearer pathways to what they are seeking to achieve, and I think be clear with them at an early stage of the hurdles and barriers that they are facing, rather than we end up with this long protracted process of a lot of money being invested, plans being submitted, plans being rejected, objections coming in. I think what we're going to try and do with this major applications process is go straight in with the developers and sit with them, look at their plans, try and help them understand quickly what they need to do, where objections are likely to come, maybe who they wish to go and speak to and consult with at an early stage before we get right into the actual planning process. So we want solutions being delivered, I hope, to planning committees that pretty much tick the boxes, rather than these endless sort of battles that are taking place and are holding back the island in so many areas. But by the same token, Phil, we've also, I'm afraid, going to have to make some better decisions based on future economic value, rather than just on historical grounds that don't really contain substantial merit. And we need to address that. And I'm afraid that's never an easy battle. But I think the important thing is, I think actually, but to push that argument to a better place, there's dozens of sites across this island, from South Quay on Douglas to Quayside on Ramsey to other areas within the town, Summerland site, for example, which should be simple, understandable projects for people to deliver on, and we need to provide and block whatever those blocks are that's stopping developers coming forward and helping improve the vibrancy. And of course, building control and future sustainability and environmental considerations that now need to go into future building projects, of course, have got to be considered, and they'll always be part of our thought process as we look at building regs and planning requirements.
We've had a low tax economy, or a low tax economic model for about 60 years now. Over that period, the population has practically doubled, and yet we still have a deficit. Now, perhaps part of the problem here was from the late 90s through to the early mid part of the 2000s. We had effectively a low-tax economic model propped up with a whole load of extra VAT money, which allowed us to develop a high-spending culture across the civil service. I think the aspiration of the Manx public is for good, high-quality public services. But with a low-tax economic model, how can we actually do this? Now, in the past, this has been addressed by new residence drives. In essence, this is pretty much what's happening here now. But unfortunately, they tend to have a short-term impact, and then we're left with the same problem because the new residents, the new economically active residents start to need services, and then they start having to, we have to spend more money, which then means that the 200 million that you're hoping to get from the new economically active people starts to be needed to be spent on health and education and so forth. How is this particular strategy going to be different from new residents' drives in the past?
I think the problems that you are alluding to are with us anyway. Park ambitious economic programs, which we absolutely need, but put those aside. We are going to battle with this issue, and it's forever a program of government, or forever a desire of government to make sure that we're delivering the highest quality of services, but along the way we've got to find the money to be able to do that, and there's always going to be competing stresses and strains within public financing, and we're facing considerable challenges right now today when it comes to our taxation income versus our expenditure, and that has been compounded by the sort of direct and indirect spending of about £300 million when it comes to the COVID situation, the need for a sort of recovery program, and bear in mind things are just sort of slowly but surely starting to get back on their feet, but probably not at the pace needed to bring us straight back into balance. And pre-COVID, I think it was actually a relatively simplistic job to understand how we continue to take things forward. Post-COVID, it's a different ballgame for Alex Allenson. And taxation strategy, how we, the balance of payments, if you like, how that's comprised and where that money is coming from is part of this program. And we have to be acknowledging that our balance of payments predominantly comes from employment, from individuals, and so we need to reassess that. There's also revenue streams, Phil. The exciting part within this economic strategy is that there are additional revenue streams that we can bring on to the island, particularly from renewable energy programs, that will help bolster our overall income levels and will provide us that extra additional money that we need to put into growing bills when it comes particularly to healthcare and healthcare transformation, but getting on top of the efficiency needed, but the standard needed, and the infrastructure needed for all these public services is an ongoing battle. We've set out in our island plan how we're tackling that, and it's going to be a continual assessment of needs, priorities, and targeted approach in these areas that we've set out, as I say, in our island plan.
Final question from me, and this is a gentle lob to you, Chief Minister. The Cannan household will be sitting down, hopefully at Christmas time, to celebrate. What are the key achievements that you are hoping you'll be able to celebrate by the end of this calendar year?
I think we will have brought focus and targets to government. We will have delivered programs of work, a continued program within healthcare transformation. We will have seen our quality assurance program being defined for education, I hope leading to better educational standards. We will have started to improve culture within government, and we will have seen improvements to the planning process, for example, in terms of the major applications process, customer charters, and we will see progress in the built environment, as well as, I hope, reflecting on what has been a positive season for our tourism industry and sort of some of our smaller businesses and entrepreneurs that we have on the island. So there will be, of course, celebrations, Phil, but behind the scenes, we know and recognise that we are also tackling serious problems for people, cost of living problems, and we will be delivering solutions in that respect. For example, in terms of supporting those who are going to be most impacted and most vulnerable to what is going to be a very harsh winter. So there's, yes, of course there will be things too that we can reflect on progress, but there will also be very real challenges facing our community, and the government will be looking to shape up and meet those challenges and help our community through a difficult winter.
Well, thank you, Chief Minister, for giving up your time in what is obviously a very, very busy time for you.
Thank you, Phil.
That was Chief Minister Alf Cannan telling us what his government's goals and ambitions are. The Chief Minister is clear on what's needed, but is he right? Is his government all spin and glitzy brochures, or is there real substance to what he says? Whatever you think, you really should take the opportunity to engage with government if you want your views to help shape the future of our island. The full interview is available as a podcast on Manx Radio's website. Please get in touch with Phil Gaughan at manxradio.com and let me know your thoughts and views on the programme. For now, though, I'm Phil Gaughan. Guramayo. Thanks for listening.